He's my mate. Alien warrior woman shielded human man after he revealed their leaders. Crime. The floor beneath his boots was smooth and cold, made of dark crystal that reflected the tall figures surrounding him. Rows of alien warriors stood in silence, their armored bodies still as statues. Above them, the ceiling curved high like the inside of a giant shell, glowing faintly with blue light. Everything about this place was designed to make visitors feel small. Elias was human. That alone made him an outsider here. Humans were not feared in this part of the galaxy. They were considered clever, yes, but physically weak and politically unimportant. The Varkun were a warrior species, taller and stronger than most, with strict traditions built around honor, loyalty, and obedience to authority. To them, humans were talkers, traders, and observers, not threats. Elias had been sent as a minor envoy, more to maintain appearances than to make any real difference. The Varkun High Council had invited him only because protocol demanded that all allied species be represented during major announcements. No one expected a human to speak. No one expected him to matter. Elias felt their eyes on him now. Some were curious. Most were bored. A few showed open irritation at his presence. At the far end of the hall sat the High Council, 7 Varkun leaders, each wearing ceremonial armor marked with symbols of rank and conquest. They were powerful figures, responsible for decisions that shaped entire star systems. To challenge them was unthinkable. The lead counselor, an elder with scarred armor and cold eyes, spoke in a deep, steady voice. The Dominion acknowledges the presence of the human envoy. You may observe. You may not interrupt. Elias nodded slightly, as tradition required. On the outside, he looked calm. On the inside, his heart was beating fast. This was the moment. For months, Elias had traveled in secret. He had listened, recorded, and collected fragments of information that were never meant to be connected. Trade routes erased from maps. Neutral colonies that vanished without explanation. Entire populations labeled as lost to natural disasters when no such disasters existed. At first, even he had not wanted to believe it, but the truth was clear now. The Varkun High Council had ordered the destruction of neutral worlds, not for defense, not for survival, but for control. By removing independent systems, they tightened their grip on interstellar trade and forced smaller species into dependence. It was a crime hidden behind honor and tradition. Elias had proof. The council continued speaking, announcing new security measures across nearby regions. The words were calm, practiced, empty. Around the hall, warriors listened without question. Elias took a slow breath. If he stayed silent, nothing would change. More worlds would burn quietly. More lives would be erased from history. He stepped forward. The sound of his boots against the crystal floor echoed loudly in the hall. Several warriors turned their heads. The counselor paused mid-sentence. The elder's eyes narrowed. "You were told to observe," the counselor said. "Yes," Elias replied. His voice sounded small in the vast chamber, but it did not shake. "But I cannot remain silent." A ripple of murmurs spread through the hall. A human speaking without permission was already an insult. Elias reached into the inside of his jacket and removed a small, dark device. He held it up so all could see. "This data core contains verified records," Elias said. "Orders issued by this council. Records of fleet movements, visual proof of attacks on neutral worlds." The hall fell silent. The counselor stood slowly. "You accuse the Dominion of falsehood." "I accuse the High Council of crimes," Elias said. "Crimes against innocent systems, against your own code of honor." Anger flashed across several council members' faces. One slammed a clawed hand against the arm of his seat. "This is treason," another growled. "From a foreign weakling." Guards began to move. Elias activated the device. Light filled the center of the hall as images appeared in the air. Burning cities, civilian ships fleeing and being destroyed. Official Varkun command codes displayed clearly alongside attack orders. Time stamps, coordinates. The evidence was undeniable. Gasps spread through the warriors. Some shifted uncomfortably, others stared in disbelief. The lead counselor roared, "Deactivate that device." Elias did not move. "You taught your people that honor is everything," Elias said. "That strength is protecting the weak. But this is control through fear. This is not honor." The guards reached him. The counselor raised his hand. "Seize the human, execute him for spreading lies and disrupting the Dominion." Several warriors hesitated. The images still hung in the air. "Do it," the counselor shouted. The guards stepped closer, weapons ready. Elias felt fear then, real fear. He knew he would not survive this, but he also knew that the truth was already out. Even if he died, the seed had been planted. He straightened his back. "I speak not as a soldier," he said, quietly but clearly, "but as a witness." A blur of movement crossed the hall. Before the guards could reach him, a tall figure stepped between Elias and the approaching weapons. She moved with absolute confidence. Commander Kayla Threx. Her armor was marked with countless battle symbols. She was known across the Dominion as a living weapon, a commander who had never lost a campaign. Warriors froze when they recognized her. Kayla drew her blade and held it firmly in front of Elias. "He will not be touched," she said. The hall erupted in shocked voices. The counselor stared at her in disbelief. "Commander Threx, stand aside. This does not concern you." "It concerns me," Kayla replied. Her voice was steady, controlled, but something dangerous lay beneath it. She turned her head slightly, just enough to look at Elias. Their eyes met. There was no fear in hers, only resolve. Then she faced the council again. "He is under my protection." The counselor's claws tightened. "On what grounds?" Kayla lifted her chin. "He is my mate." The words echoed through the grand tribunal hall. Silence followed, heavy and complete. Varkun mating bonds were sacred. They were not spoken lightly. To declare such a bond was to invoke the oldest laws of the Dominion. No counselor, no matter how powerful, could ignore it without breaking tradition entirely. The guards stopped. Some warriors lowered their weapons in shock. The counselors began speaking over one another, voices filled with anger and disbelief. "This is madness. A lie to protect a criminal. A human cannot." Kayla raised her blade slightly. The sound of metal cut through the noise. "Challenge me if you doubt my word," she said. "You know the law." None of them moved. The lead counselor's face darkened. "Commander Threx, you disgrace your rank. This human has accused us of grave crimes." "And he speaks the truth," Kayla replied. Another wave of murmurs spread through the hall, stronger this time. Confusion, doubt, fear. Kayla did not explain further. She did not need to. Her reputation carried weight. If she stood with the human, then something was very wrong. The counselor exhaled slowly, forcing his anger down. "Very well," he said coldly. "By ancient law, the bond is acknowledged. The human will not be executed." Elias released a breath he had not realized he was holding. "But," the counselor continued, "both of you are now threats to the stability of the Dominion. You will be taken into secure custody until this matter is resolved." Kayla nodded once. "I accept." She sheathed her blade and stepped aside, but remained close to Elias. As guards approached again, more cautiously this time, Elias looked at her, confusion and gratitude mixing inside him. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. Kayla did not look at him as she answered. "Yes," she said, "I did." They were escorted out of the grand tribunal hall together, leaving behind a chamber filled with shaken warriors and a council whose authority had just been cracked. Behind them, the images of burning worlds slowly faded from the air, but the truth they revealed did not. And for the first time in generations, the Varkun Dominion was no longer certain of itself. Far across the galaxy, a quiet change had begun. The holding chamber was silent except for the low hum of energy fields built into the walls. The room was large but empty, made of the same dark crystal as the tribunal hall. A faint blue glow pulsed slowly, like a steady heartbeat. Two Varkun guards stood outside the transparent barrier, watching closely but keeping their distance. Elias sat on a smooth bench near the center of the chamber. His hands rested on his knees, his shoulders tense. Only now, with the danger momentarily paused, did his body begin to feel the weight of what had happened. His mind replayed the images from the hall again and again. The anger of the council, the weapons pointed at him, and then Kayla stepping forward without hesitation. Across from him stood Kayla Threx. She had removed her helmet, revealing sharp features marked by old battle scars. Her eyes were a deep, metallic gray, focused and calm. She stood straight, arms crossed, as if the chamber were nothing more than another waiting room before battle. Elias broke the silence. "You claimed a mating bond," he said carefully. "That is permanent, isn't it?" Kayla turned her head slightly to look at him. "Yes." Elias swallowed. "Why?" For a moment she did not answer. Instead, she walked slowly toward the energy barrier, checking the guards outside. Satisfied, she turned back. "Because it was the only law the council could not break in front of their people," she said. "And because it was true." Elias stared at her. "True, we barely know each other." Kayla's expression softened just slightly. "You know how humans speak of bonds?" she asked. "Choice, trust, shared purpose." "Yes," Elias said. "Usually." "For Varkun," she continued, "a mating bond is not about time spent. It is about recognition. When two minds see the same truth and choose to stand with it, no matter the cost." She paused. "You stood alone against my people's highest authority," she said. "Knowing you would die, that matters." Elias looked down at his hands. "I didn't expect anyone to stand with me." Kayla nodded. "That is why I did." Before Elias could reply, the chamber lights shifted. A low tone echoed through the room, signaling an incoming communication. A symbol appeared on the wall, official council authority. Kayla's jaw tightened. The image of the lead counselor formed in the air. His expression was controlled, but anger burned beneath the surface. "Commander Threx," he said. "Human." Elias stood instinctively, but Kayla remained still. "You have placed the Dominion in an unstable position," the counselor continued. "Your actions have caused unrest among the warrior ranks. Questions are being asked." "That is not my concern," Kayla replied calmly. "Truth always causes unrest." The counselor ignored her remark and turned his gaze to Elias. "Human, your evidence has been reviewed." Elias said nothing. "It will be examined further," the counselor went on. "Until then, you are confined. Any attempt to communicate with external parties will be considered hostile action." Kayla stepped forward. "You will not silence him." The counselor's eyes flicked to her. "You forget yourself." "No," Kayla said. "I remember the law." "By acknowledging the bond, you accepted shared protection. Harm to him is harm to me." The counselor's image hardened. "Do not test the limits of tradition, Commander." The projection vanished. The chamber returned to silence. Elias let out a slow breath. "They're scared." "Yes," Kayla agreed. "That makes them dangerous." Time passed slowly. Outside the chamber, movement increased. Warriors gathered in small groups, speaking in low tones. Elias could see them through the barrier. Their body language told a clear story: uncertainty. "What happens now?" Elias asked. Kayla walked back to the bench and sat across from him. "Now the Dominion decides whether it values honor or control more. And if it chooses control, then it fractures," she said simply. Elias studied her face. "You knew this would happen." "Yes, and you still did it." "Yes," he shook his head slowly. "Back on Earth we would call that brave or reckless." Kayla's lips curved slightly. "Those words are often the same thing." Hours later, the guards outside were replaced. These new warriors were younger, less rigid. One of them glanced at Elias with open curiosity rather than hostility. That was when Elias realized something important. The council could control laws, fleets, and weapons, but they could not easily control belief. Later, a young Varkun officer approached the barrier. He hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Commander Threx." Kayla looked up. "Speak." Many warriors have seen the images, the officer said. They are unsettled. Some ask why neutral worlds were marked as threats. Kayla nodded. And what do you think? The officer hesitated again. Then I think honor should not require silence. Kayla held his gaze. Remember that thought. The officer bowed slightly and stepped back. Elias watched the exchange carefully. You're changing them. They were already changing, Kayla said. You simply gave them a reason. As the cycle shifted to artificial night, the chamber dimmed. Elias leaned back against the bench, exhaustion finally catching up to him. I don't think they'll let us go, he said quietly. No, Kayla replied, but they will hesitate. That gives us time. For what? For others to act. Elias frowned. Others? Kayla looked at the barrier again. Not all counselors agree with what was done. Not all warriors follow blindly. The Dominion is strong, but it is not united. She turned back to him. And now the humans are watching. Elias blinked. How do you know? You would not come here alone, Kayla said. Your species does not abandon its witnesses. He smiled faintly. We try not to. Suddenly the chamber shook slightly. Not an attack, more like distant movement. Alarms did not sound, but the guards outside stiffened. What was that? Elias asked. Kayla stood. A message being sent, she said, or intercepted. Moments later, the young officer returned, urgency clear in his posture. Commander, he said quietly, the lower fleets are requesting clarification from the council. Some captains refuse new orders. Kayla closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. Good. The officer looked at Elias. The human's words spread quickly. Elias felt a strange mix of pride and fear. I didn't plan for this. No one ever plans revolutions, Kayla said. The officer hesitated, then added, there are whispers that humans are dangerous. Elias raised an eyebrow. Because we fight. No, the officer said, because you make us think. He left. Kayla looked at Elias with something like respect. You see, this is why your people worry the galaxy. Elias laughed softly despite himself. We're really not that impressive. Kayla tilted her head. You stand unarmed before empires and speak truth. That is rare. The lights brightened again as artificial day returned. The guards outside shifted uneasily. One of them deliberately turned his back, giving the chamber a measure of privacy. Elias noticed. They're choosing sides. Yes, Kayla said, slowly. She moved closer to him and lowered her voice. Listen carefully. If things turn violent, you must stay behind me. Elias shook his head. I didn't come here to hide. You came here to reveal truth, she said. You have done that. Let others fight if it comes to that. He met her gaze. You're risking everything for me. For the truth, she corrected. Then after a pause, and for you. Before he could respond, another projection appeared, this time not official. It was a group transmission. Several counselors appeared, not seated on thrones but standing in a private chamber. Their tone was different, controlled but strained. Commander Threx, one of them said. We wish to speak without the others. Kayla folded her arms. Then speak. The Dominion cannot survive open division, the counselor said. The humans' evidence forces difficult decisions. Elias stepped forward. The decision is simple. End the crimes. The counselors exchanged looks. One sighed. If we do, the old order falls. Yes, Elias said, but something better can rise. Silence followed. Finally, the counselor nodded slowly. This matter is no longer just internal. The projection ended. Kayla looked at Elias. You see now, he nodded. There's no going back. No, she agreed. And that is why this matters. Outside the chamber, warriors began to gather not in ranks but in circles, talking, questioning. The Dominion was changing, not with explosions or battles, but with doubt. And at the center of it all stood a human who refused to stay silent, and a warrior who chose truth over obedience. The galaxy had begun to pay attention. The chamber doors opened for the first time since Elias and Kayla had been confined. The energy barrier faded away with a soft hum, and two Varkun guards stepped aside. Their posture was different now. They were alert but not hostile. One of them nodded respectfully at Kayla. "You are requested in the inner council corridor," the guard said. "Both of you." Kayla studied him for a moment, then nodded. Elias stood beside her. He felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the quiet warning that danger had not passed. But something had changed. The air itself felt different, heavy with uncertainty instead of certainty. They walked through long halls carved from dark stone and crystal. Tall banners lined the walls, each marked with symbols of past victories. Elias noticed something he had not before. Many of the banners were old, very old. The victories they celebrated belonged to another time, another kind of dominion. As they walked, more warriors appeared along the corridors. Some watched silently. Others turned away, pretending not to stare. A few met Elias' eyes, curiosity clear on their faces. "He is smaller than I expected," one whispered, not unkindly. "Yes," another replied, "but he stood before the council." The words followed Elias like echoes. They reached a wide chamber that was not as grand as the tribunal hall but far more tense. Several counselors stood there, not seated on thrones but gathered around a circular platform. The lead counselor was not present. Kayla stopped at the edge of the platform. Elias remained at her side. One of the counselors spoke first. "What you revealed cannot be undone." "That was the point," Elias said calmly. The counselor studied him. "You understand that your actions may lead to civil conflict within the Dominion." "Yes," Elias replied, "but silence would have led to more destruction." Another counselor stepped forward. "You speak as if destruction were not already part of survival." Elias met her gaze. "There is a difference between defending yourself and erasing those who cannot fight back." Silence followed. Kayla broke it. "The warriors are restless," she said. "They have seen the evidence. They are asking questions." "That is what worries us," a counselor admitted. "Questions lead to doubt. Doubt weakens unity." "No," Kayla said firmly. "Lies weaken unity, truth tests it." The counselors exchanged uneasy looks. One of them sighed. "The old ways are failing," he said quietly. "We built our strength on obedience. Now obedience alone is no longer enough." Elias felt a strange pull in his chest. This was not an enemy speaking. This was a leader realizing he was standing at the edge of history. "What happens now?" Elias asked. The counselor looked at him. "That depends on how much damage has already spread." As if summoned by his words, alarms sounded throughout the complex. Not the sharp, urgent alarms of attack, but a low, repeating signal. A warrior rushed into the chamber. "Lower Fleet Command reports refusal to carry out council orders," she said. "Several units have powered down weapons and are requesting clarification." The room erupted in voices. "This is rebellion. This is chaos." Kayla raised her voice. "This is conscience." The warrior hesitated, then added, "There are also transmissions from non-Varkun systems. Human networks are broadcasting the evidence." Elias closed his eyes briefly. Earth had received the data. That meant this was no longer a contained matter. One counselor looked directly at him. "Your people move quickly." "Yes," Elias said. "We learned long ago that truth moves faster than force." Another counselor frowned. "That makes humans dangerous." Kayla turned sharply. "No, it makes them honest." The counselor did not argue. Elias felt something shift inside him. For the first time since entering Varkun space, he did not feel like prey in a predator's den. He felt like a spark in dry grass. They were escorted to a secure observation deck overlooking a massive hangar. Hundreds of Varkun warriors stood below, not in ranks but in scattered groups. Ships remained docked. Weapons systems were idle. "This should not be happening," a counselor muttered. "It was always going to happen," Kayla replied. "You cannot build an empire on silence forever." As they watched, a tall warrior stepped forward onto a raised platform in the hangar. Elias recognized him as a fleet captain from the recorded footage. The captain's voice echoed through the hangar. "We were told these worlds were threats. We were told this was honor." He paused. "Today we learned the truth. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The captain continued, "If honor means obedience without question, then honor is empty." Several warriors lowered their heads. Others raised their weapons, not in threat but in salute. Elias felt his throat tighten. He had hoped for doubt. He had not expected this. Kayla watched with intense focus. "They are choosing." The counselors beside them looked shaken. "If this continues," one said, "the Dominion will change beyond recognition." Kayla nodded. "That is what change does." The observation deck door opened again. The young officer who had spoken earlier entered, his expression tense. "Commander Threx," he said. "The lead counselor demands your presence. Alone." Kayla did not hesitate. "No," the officer blinked. "He insists." Kayla turned to Elias. "Stay here." Elias shook his head. "I'm part of this." "You are the reason for this," she corrected gently. "That makes you a target." "So are you." "Yes," Kayla said, "but I am harder to silence." She placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, a simple gesture filled with meaning. Then she turned and followed the officer. Elias watched her go, unease settling deep in his chest. Time passed slowly. The hangar below buzzed with movement and voices. Messages flashed across displays as more fleets refused orders. Others declared neutrality. A few remained loyal to the old council. The Dominion was splitting. Finally, Kayla returned. Her expression was controlled, but her eyes were darker. "He wants you removed," she said quietly. "Not executed, disappeared." Elias let out a slow breath. "That was always a possibility. He believes if you are gone, this will calm down." "And will it?" Kayla shook her head. "No, the truth is already loose." She leaned closer. "But he may act anyway." "What do we do?" Elias asked. Kayla looked out over the hangar again. "We give them something they cannot ignore." Before Elias could ask what she meant, the lights dimmed. A system-wide broadcast signal activated. Kayla straightened. "They are calling an emergency assembly." The main display lit up, showing the tribunal hall once more. Warriors filled every level. The council took their places, including the lead counselor. His voice carried across the Dominion. "Warriors of Varkun," he began. "We face deception from within and manipulation from without." Murmurs spread. "The human envoy has sought to weaken us by exposing classified operations," the counselor continued. "These operations were necessary for our survival." Elias clenched his fists. Kayla's jaw tightened. The counselor raised a clawed hand. "Order must be restored." Kayla stepped forward into the broadcast range. "So speak the truth," she said. Gasps echoed across the hall. The counselor turned sharply. "Commander Threx, you defy—" "I defy lies," Kayla said loudly. "You taught us honor, do not fear it now." She gestured toward Elias. "This human did not weaken us. He reminded us who we claim to be." The hall erupted in noise. Some warriors roared approval. Others shouted anger. The counselor's face twisted with rage. "You would let an outsider define us." Elias stepped forward. "I am not defining you," he said clearly. "You are." He took a breath. "Humans have made terrible mistakes in our history. We survived not by hiding them but by facing them." He looked directly into the camera. "Strength is not silence, strength is correction." The hall went quiet. The counselor stared at him. "You speak boldly for someone without power." Elias met his gaze. "You are wrong." "I have all the power I need." The counselor laughed harshly. "And what power is that?" "The truth," Elias said, "and those willing to stand with it." Below, warriors began to step forward, one by one, not attacking, not kneeling, standing. Kayla felt it then, the shift. The moment when the old Dominion truly ended. The counselor saw it too. His confidence faltered. This was no longer about a human envoy or a warrior commander. This was about what the Varkun would become. And the galaxy was watching. The Grand Tribunal Hall had never held so many warriors at once. Every level, every balcony, every standing platform was filled. The air felt heavy, not with anger but with expectation. The old certainty that had ruled the Dominion for centuries was gone. replaced by something unfamiliar and dangerous choice. Elias stood beside Kayla at the center platform. He could feel thousands of eyes on him, studying him, measuring him. He reminded himself to breathe slowly. He was not a soldier. He was not a ruler. He was only a human who refused to look away. Across from them, the High Council sat in a rigid line. The lead counselor's expression was hard, but there was tension beneath it. He knew control was slipping. "You have spoken enough," the counselor said, his voice echoing through the hall. "This assembly is not a place for emotional speeches. It is a place for order." Kayla stepped forward. "Then let order face truth." A low murmur rolled through the warriors. Some nodded. Others watched carefully, unsure. The counselor rose from his seat. "Commander Threx, you stand accused of undermining Dominion unity, protecting a foreign agitator, and violating your oath." Kayla did not flinch. "My oath was to honor." "You twist words," the counselor snapped. "Honor without obedience is chaos." Elias felt the moment tightening like a drawn blade. He knew this was the point where things could turn violent. He took a step forward, careful to keep his hands visible. "May I speak?" he asked. The counselor glared at him. "You have spoken enough, human." Before he could continue, a voice rang out from the upper tiers. "Let him speak." All eyes turned. A fleet captain stood among the warriors, armor marked with long service. He was not young and not reckless. "If our honor is strong," the captain continued, "it will survive words." More voices joined in. "Let him speak. We deserve answers." The counselor's jaw tightened. He looked around and saw what Elias already knew. Forcing silence now would shatter what authority remained. "Very well," the counselor said coldly. "Speak, but choose your words carefully." Elias nodded. He stepped forward until he stood alone at the center, Kayla just behind him. "I did not come here to weaken the Varkun," Elias began. His voice carried clearly, helped by the hall's design. "I came because people were dying in silence." Images appeared above him again, projected from the restored data core. Not the worst moments, but enough. Orders. Coordinates, council seals. "These were not accidents," Elias said. "They were choices." A warrior shouted from below. "They said those worlds were threats." "Yes," Elias replied. "That is what leaders say when they fear losing control." The counselor slammed his staff against the floor. "Enough. You presume to judge us by human weakness." Elias turned to face him. "No, I judge you by your own laws." He gestured to the banners hanging around the hall. "You teach that strength protects, not destroys. That honor stands in the light. If those words mean nothing, then say so." Silence fell again. Kayla stepped forward now. "I fought in the campaigns ordered by this council," she said. "I trusted them. I believed them." Her voice did not rise, but it cut deeper than shouting. "When I learned the truth," she continued, "I had a choice, obey lies or protect honor." She met the gaze of the warriors. "I chose honor." A young warrior stepped out from the crowd. "What happens now?" he asked. "If the council is wrong, who leads us?" The question hung in the air, heavy and honest. The lead counselor smiled thinly. "You see," he said, "this is the danger, confusion, division." "No," Elias said quietly, "this is responsibility." The counselor turned on him. "Easy words for someone who will not bear the cost." "I will," Elias said. "Humans already are." The counselor laughed sharply. "Your species thinks itself brave because it talks. Talk does not hold an empire together." "Neither do lies," Elias replied. A sudden movement rippled through the lower levels. Several senior warriors stepped forward together. Among them were fleet commanders, ground leaders, and instructors from the warrior academies. One of them spoke. "High Council, we request a formal trial of honor." The hall erupted. The counselor froze. "You dare." "It is our right," the warrior said firmly. "When leadership is questioned." Kayla's eyes widened slightly. Even she had not expected this so soon. The counselor's voice trembled with restrained fury. "A trial of honor is not a debate, it is final." "Yes," the warrior agreed. "That is why we ask for it." the counselors whispered among themselves. They knew refusing would confirm guilt, accepting was dangerous. At last, the lead counselor raised his staff. So be it. A trial of honor will be held. A collective breath moved through the hall. The charges, the counselor continued, will be presented by the accused. Kayla stepped forward without hesitation. I will present, the counselor sneered. And who will stand against you? Elias answered before she could. I will. The hall went still. The counselor stared at him in disbelief. You are not Varkun, you cannot. I am not claiming your blood, Elias said, only your truth. A pause stretched. Then an elder counselor spoke quietly. The law does not forbid it. The lead counselor's eyes burned, but he nodded. Very well, let the galaxy witness this madness. The trial began not with weapons, but with records. Elias presented the data again, this time slowly, clearly, explaining each order, each signature. Kayla confirmed the military context, showing how neutral worlds posed no threat. The counselor tried to argue necessity, survival, strategy. Elias listened, then responded simply. Survival that destroys everything worth surviving is not strength. When it was the counselor's turn to present evidence, there was little. Claims of hidden threats, vague warnings, no proof. Warriors began to shift uneasily. Finally, the trial moved to the final phase, not combat but judgment. An ancient mechanism activated. Lights dimmed. A single question appeared across the hall, visible to every warrior present. Does the leadership act with honor? One by one, warriors placed their hands on the panels before them. Green light for yes, red for no. Elias' heart pounded. Kayla stood still as stone. Lights began to appear. Red, red, green, then more red. The pattern was clear. The final count appeared in glowing symbols. Honor failed. A stunned silence followed. The lead counselor looked around as if seeing the hall for the first time. His authority, built over decades, collapsed in a single moment. This is impossible, he whispered. Kayla spoke, her voice steady. The warriors have chosen. Guards moved, not toward Elias or Kayla, but toward the council seats, not aggressively, respectfully, firmly. The lead counselor straightened, pride flaring one last time. You think this ends conflict, he said. You think truth will hold this dominion together. Elias met his gaze. No, but lies were tearing it apart anyway. The counselor was escorted away. The remaining counselors stepped down willingly, their faces heavy with understanding. A new silence settled, different from before. Not fear, not obedience, possibility. A senior warrior turned to Kayla. Commander Threx, the Dominion requires interim leadership. Kayla shook her head. Not me alone, she looked at Elias. The warrior followed her gaze, surprised. The human? Yes, Kayla said, as witness, as advisor, as reminder. Murmurs spread again, but this time they were thoughtful. Elias felt the weight of it press down on him. I did not come to rule. You came to reveal, Kayla said. Now help us rebuild. He took a slow breath and nodded. Then we do it openly. Above them, the banners of old victories seemed less imposing, less certain. Across the galaxy, signals spread fast. The Varkun Dominion, once feared for its fleets, had changed course without firing a single shot. And at the center of it stood a human who spoke truth, and a warrior who chose honor over power. The trial was over, but the work had only begun. Part 5. 1,800 words ka leko, or interesting hunachea, or third-person style, ma lekni ha, or simple basic English ka, or violated free honachai. Without short heading the days after the trial of honor felt unreal to many within the Varkun Dominion. There were no explosions, no great battles, no cities burning. Instead, there was silence filled with movement, meetings, discussions, arguments, and long hours of listening. For a warrior empire built on command and obedience, this was the most difficult kind of change. Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the central city. Massive structures of crystal and metal stretched toward the sky, their surfaces reflecting the light of a distant star. Ships moved slowly through the air lanes, not in tight military formations but in cautious, independent paths. Behind him, Kayla approached quietly. "You should be resting," she said. Elias smiled faintly. "I could say the same to you." Kayla stood beside him, resting her hands on the railing. "The warriors are restless. They are used to orders, not questions." "And now they have many," Elias replied. "Yes," Kayla said, "but they are asking them openly. That matters." Across the Dominion, temporary councils had formed, not just of high-ranking warriors, but of engineers, navigators, historians, and even civilians from allied species. It was slow and messy. Arguments broke out daily, but no one was being silenced. That alone was a revolution. News from beyond Varkun space arrived constantly. Other species were watching closely. Some were fearful, others were hopeful. A few had already sent messages asking for talks, not with the old Dominion but with the new one. And always humans were mentioned. Elias felt the weight of that more than anything else. In a quiet chamber nearby, a meeting was coming to an end. Kayla and Elias entered together. Several Varkun leaders turned to face them, their expressions serious but respectful. "The last Council Loyalist fleet has stood down," a senior commander reported. "No resistance," Kayla nodded. "Good," another leader spoke. "The question remains, what does the Dominion become now?" Silence followed. All eyes slowly turned toward Elias. He raised his hand slightly. "I am not here to decide your future," one of the leaders replied, "but you help change it." Elias took a breath. "Then I will speak as a witness, not a ruler." They listened. "Humans made a mistake once," Elias said. "We believed strength came from control, from forcing others to obey. It nearly destroyed us." Kayla watched him closely. "We survived," Elias continued, "by learning that strength also comes from restraint, from admitting when we are wrong, from building trust instead of fear." He looked around the chamber. "You do not need to become human, you only need to become honest." The leaders exchanged looks. Kayla stepped forward. "The Dominion will remain strong," she said, "but strength will no longer mean silence." The room filled with agreement, not loud but steady. Later that day, a message arrived from Earth. Elias stood alone as the transmission played. Human leaders appeared on the screen, their expressions cautious but proud. "You did what many thought impossible," one of them said. "You stood unarmed before an empire and lived." Elias shook his head slightly. "I didn't do it alone." "We know," the leader replied. "And because of that, humanity's position in the galaxy has changed." After the transmission ended, Elias felt a familiar unease. Humans were being noticed now, not as weak traders or background observers, but as something else. Disruptors. Kayla joined him again. "Your people are proud of you." "They are also afraid," Elias said. She tilted her head. "Why?" "Because attention can be dangerous," he replied. "Once others see what humans can do, they may try to control us or stop us." Kayla considered this. "That fear already exists." "Yes," Elias said, "but now it has a reason." A formal assembly was held days later. Not in the old tribunal hall, but in an open forum accessible to all ranks. No thrones, no elevated seats, just a wide circle. Kayla spoke first. "The age of unquestioned command is over," she said. "The age of responsibility begins." She turned to Elias. "And with it, a new place for humanity." Elias stepped forward, feeling the eyes of thousands on him again. "Humans are not conquerors," he said. "We are not saints either. We fail often." A few warriors nodded. Honesty was familiar to them now. "But we adapt," Elias continued. "We learn, and when we see injustice, we have a habit of pointing at it even when it's dangerous." He paused. "That does not make us heroes, it makes us stubborn." A low ripple of amusement moved through the crowd. Kayla spoke again. "The Dominion recognizes humanity as a full, equal partner." This time the reaction was louder, surprise, debate, but no outrage. After the assembly, life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. Fleets were reorganized, borders were reviewed. Aid was sent to systems once ignored. For the first time, records were opened instead of sealed. Elias worked alongside Varkun analysts, helping translate human concepts of transparency and shared governance into forms the Dominion could understand. It was not easy. There were setbacks, arguments, mistakes, but there was no turning back. One evening, Elias and Kayla stood together on a high platform overlooking the city lights. "You could return to Earth," Kayla said quietly. "Your role here is complete." Elias thought about it, about home, about quiet places and familiar skies. "I might," he said. "Someday," she nodded, accepting the uncertainty. "And you?" he asked. "You are changing everything you were trained to protect." Kayla looked out over the city. "I am protecting it," she said, "just differently." A moment passed. "Do you regret it?" Elias asked. "No," Kayla replied without hesitation. "Do you?" Elias smiled. "No." Far beyond the Dominion, other powers watched carefully. Analysts whispered warnings, strategists adjusted plans. One report, circulated quietly among several empires, contained a single line that unsettled them more than fleets ever had. "Humans do not conquer with weapons. They conquer with truth." Some feared that. Others respected it. On Earth, young students would one day learn about a human envoy who stood before an alien council and refused to stay silent. On Varkun worlds, warriors would tell stories of the moment honor was tested and chosen. And somewhere between the stars, a quiet understanding spread. If one human, unarmed and alone, could shake an empire by speaking the truth, then humanity was not weak. Humanity was dangerous in a different way, not because it destroyed, but because it changed things forever.